Hello guys and welcome to FP1 and welcome back to the instant reactions for the Portuguese Grand Prix. It's a race that, if I'm honest, I feel might be a little bit underrated when we get to the end of the season because there wasn't too much action and, you know, there wasn't many incidents out on track, but still a lot of really cool talking points. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton breaking Michael Schumacher's record now, 92 race victories, and, you know, hats off to him, you know, amazing stuff. I said it 2 weeks ago, but just wow, to watch these kind of stats get surpassed now is frankly just incredible. I'm watching him now with Bono on the podium, and it's just so good to see. You know, it is really good to see, and I feel like that kind of Lewis Hamilton we don't see enough in the sport, and we need to see that kind of happy Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton isn't complaining every 5 seconds. We need that more to come out. I think that will really help his overall appearance in the entire sport, if that makes sense. You know. I think a lot of people look at him for all the moaning and complaining he does, but you do see this happy, joyous side of Lewis as well. We're watching it on the podium at the moment, and yeah, it is just a bit of a shame that we don't see that enough. But, you know, hats off to Lewis, absolutely smashed it this weekend. Bottas seemed to have the momentum going up through practice, through the first few parts of qualifying. Then, of course, we get to Q3, and Hamilton's just like, I'll just run away by a good 2/10 here, and yeah, there you go. But hey, what can you do? Hats off to Hamilton. Absolutely smashed it this weekend. As well, just before we get into the talking parts of the race, I want to go back to practice very briefly. Max Verstappen, he had a thing today with, in fact, he had a thing over the entire weekend with the Racing Point cars. Just, he sees pink and he wants to kill it by the looks of things. You know, Lance Stroll, that incident in practice, for me, it just wasn't necessary. We didn't need it. I don't see why he had to stick his car up the inside there. Obviously, there was no penalties awarded in the end. If you ask me, it's not 100% one driver's fault, but I think the blame definitely lies more with Max than it does Lance in this case. You know, I've been critical of both drivers, I think, let's be honest, but I've got to put it more on Max on that one. I can see why they said it's a racing incident, and I can see why they're not giving penalties, but, you know, I just feel that it was just an unnecessary move, especially for a practice session as well. And Lance Stroll as well, a driver who really has come out of his shell this season. He's done very, very well, but this weekend just wasn't fantastic for him. And, you know, he had that incident in practice, and then qualifying is a fair bit off Sergio Perez as well, if I remember correctly. And then, you know, we get to the race, and it just wasn't brilliant. He didn't have the pace, and he clashed with Norris. And, yeah, just pretty poor from Lance today, which was a shame, because, you know, he's been coming up through all the criticism he's faced in his career so far, and I've handed that criticism out as well. I'm not going to deny that. He was, you know, looking on for something towards the end of the season, and, you know, that Racing Point's been very good this year, but yeah, just making too many mistakes this weekend. Got some penalties for exceeding track limits as well. Just, yeah, a little bit disappointing. But anyway, let's now then talk about the race in the whole. We'll start with, well, the start of the race, and, you know, funnily enough, it's being played on Sky Sports now, so I'm just watching it over. Pretty poor start for the Mercedes overall. We saw Carlos Sainz, who flew through the pack. I didn't realise initially how far back he started on the grid, but came right through, was leading the Grand Prix for the first 7 or so laps. I was thinking, have we got another Monza here? Please, let there be another Monza. Obviously, goes into the race, 25 seconds up from Bottas as Hamilton winning. But still, it was great to see McLaren leading the race again. Obviously, when the medium tyres of Mercedes fully kind of kicked in, then, you know, they flew off and flew into the distance. But fantastic start from Sainz. Someone who's not been spoken about, Kimi Räikkönen, started, what, 17th, 18th? Was up to 6th by the end of lap 1. And for a driver who, if I remember correctly, back in his Ferrari days, had a record for losing positions on the first lap, that's pretty impressive. You know, you've got to hand it to him. Fair play to Kimi today. I think more of the underrated drivers, he didn't get to the points by the end, just missed out to Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari for the points. But fair play to Lewis, also to Kimi even, absolutely smashed it. And let's stick with McLaren as well, because, you know, McLaren, they need some points. I think obviously they've had this new aero upgrade that's come into the car in the last few races. It's not looked like it's had the, well, let's say the initial kind of performance gate they were expecting. Going to more of like a Mercedes kind of ideology, especially at the front end of the car. And, you know, this weekend did look better for them. A pretty strong qualifying for both drivers. Obviously, as I said earlier, Sainz getting to the lead. Norris was flying, I think he was in P4 at one point, holding off Verstappen for a fair few laps at the start. So, you know, fair play to McLaren today, and they need that, you know, in that fight for third now. Obviously, Ferrari are out of it, you know, they're fighting with AlphaTauri for 6th. So, there is a massive opportunity for the likes of Racing Point, for Renault and for McLaren to get that third place slot, and it's so close between the three teams at the moment that, you know, whoever gets there is going to get a massive amount of money, well, to go into not just next year but also 2022 with all these new regs. So it is massive, the amount of money that comes out of this for those teams, and, you know, any point counts this weekend. Obviously Norris taken out by Stroll again. Stroll, it was just such an unnecessary incident going around the outside. The move, it was sort of on, it was sort of not on. Norris was fully in his rights to hold the line there. You know, we did see some brilliant moves on the outside of turn one, and let's just bear in mind that we didn't expect much overtaking this weekend. We got some fantastic racing this weekend, and yeah, there weren't many incidents, so to say, which I think is why this race won't be spoken about much when we get to the end of the season, but, you know, some fantastic close wheel-to-wheel racing, which is really what Formula 1 should be about, more than the actual crashes. So, yeah, brilliant job from all the drivers today, but, of course, this one instant we saw Stroll get a penalty for it. It wasn't. The move just wasn't on. It was a bit of a silly one. Obviously, Norris, understandably, was fairly angry, I think, at the end of it. But, just a shame for both drivers. We saw Stroll retiring at the end of the Grand Prix. And Norris, although he did fight back, he was on for some brilliant points at the end of that one. And I don't think got the most out of his weekend that he could have done as a result of that incident. So it is a bit of a shame. But, yeah, you know, that's just Formula 1 at the end of the day. And, you know, we saw Sainz get a fair share of his bad luck at the start of the season. I feel like these last few weekends, that luck has shifted back to Norris. So, yeah, you know, it's a tough one for McLaren. But that fight is going to be very, very interesting to watch. Obviously, Mercedes have run away with first, and Red Bull, no one's going to get them for second now. But, you know, fair play to those three teams. It's going to be very, very exciting to see where they end up at the end of the season. Now, I did mention Red Bull, though. Obviously, Max Verstappen had a bit of an interesting weekend with those incidents, but, you know, finished P3 in the end in a bit of a quiet race for him. Alex Albon, I feel we talk about him every week at this point, and it just doesn't get any better, and I feel like his performances are getting worse and worse and worse, and every time I think, oh, it can't get worse than this, it does. And obviously there's been talk over the weeks, over the recent days as well, of the likes of, you know, Hulk or Perez replacing him as well, and that it's just not, it's not looking good for Albon at the moment. I think it was Helmut Marko that said he's got basically till Imola to perform, and if he doesn't, then they're going to put someone else in that car. Now, there's two possibilities there. It will either be Checo or Hulk. My bet is it will be Hulk, because, you know, that's easiest for Red Bull just to pluck out since he's not under contract from another team, and then he'll just sit in there, and Albon will either go back to AlphaTauri and replace probably Kvyat, or he'll be out altogether. Or if they pick Perez, they could put Hulk in that Racing Point for the rest of the year. I don't know what they'll do. My guess is it will be Hulk for the end of the year if they do it. I'm not like I really would love to see it. It'd be interesting to see as well how a more experienced driver deals with that second Red Bull car, because it has seemed in the last couple of years to be a bit of a poison chalice. And I do feel like Hulk is incredibly underrated. That stat that he's not got a podium isn't a fair representation of how good he is. So it would be really interesting to see. But Albon this weekend, out the point, beaten by an Alfa Romeo and Sebastian Vettel. Oh, there was a point where I thought he'd get beaten by Russell, and I thought, oh god, mate, he's dead. He's gone. Like, Marco's going to kill him. Like, it's not looking good. But yeah, I mean, what can you do? If you're Alex Albon at the moment, I think his confidence has been utterly just crumpled up and chucked in the bin at this point. And yeah, it's just, I would not want to be him right now. Now, on the subject of bins, let's talk about Esteban Ocon, a driver who I have slated a fair bit this season for being utterly trash, but I will give it to him this weekend. This entire weekend, actually, he has been closer to Ricciardo. You know, I think Ricciardo struggled a bit, which might have added to that slightly, but, you know, within 10th in qualifying, which, you know, fair play to him. Didn't make a mistake really all weekend. Finished ahead of Ricciardo by keeping those tyres going for God knows how long. I don't know how he managed it. It was like 50 odd laps on the medium compound tyre. So fair play to Ocon this weekend. Really put it out of the bag. And when there are these rumours of Gasly maybe going to Alpine, if not next year, the year after, you do need to start kind of cranking up the performance. And you're going to be against Alonso next year, which is, well, if you thought Ricciardo was tough, then yeah, this is Fernando Alonso we're talking about, who is no pushover whatsoever and will have the entire team rallying around him. So Ocon, he's in a bit of a tricky boat right now, and he needs these performances to kind of keep that attention on him, and for the right reasons rather than the wrong ones. Now, I did mention Gasly there, and I feel like he's kind of fallen away from the limelight since his win in Monza, what was that, a few months ago now, but Gasly well and truly back. P5 up there for driver of the day, in my opinion, this weekend. When you look at where Kvyat was as well, it wasn't great. Kvyat didn't have a particularly good weekend. And, you know, again, he's another driver I think is going to lose his seat at the end of the season, unfortunately. But, yeah, Gasly pulled it out of the bag. And especially when they were in that fight, as I mentioned earlier, with Ferrari for P6, that's big money on the line there between P6 and P7. And the fact they're fighting Ferrari, I can't get that out of my head. Ferrari are a new level of rubbish, I think, this season. But, anyway, hats off to Pierre Gasly. Absolutely smashed it. Sebastian Vettel spoke about Ferrari. Oh, yeah. I mean, he brought it back a little bit in the race. But, yeah, just... I think the fact that Charles Leclerc... Let's focus on the positives here. Charles Leclerc pulled it out of the bag this weekend. He did incredibly well. P4 by the end of the Grand Prix, which in a Ferrari this season was incredibly unexpected. So, fair play to Charles Leclerc. But Sebastian Vettel just... I think he's even conceded over the weekend that Leclerc is in another dimension, effectively, this year. And whether that's just Leclerc, who I think has been very underrated given the fact he's been quite a poor car this year and taken, 2 podiums away from it. I don't feel like he's been spoken about that much. But Leclerc's just on one at the moment. Kind of very much like George Russell, I think. They're kind of stepping in their stride. Now, they get into their stride and they are smashing it with the results. And he's just kind of being held back by that car now. I do feel like Ferrari perhaps maybe building the car around Charles more than Vettel, which would explain Vettel's struggles and why Charles has really kind of fallen in love with that Ferrari car. Very similar to what's happening with Red Bull and Max Verstappen, but still, you know, that performance should not be scoffed at. So fair play to Charles Leclerc. But yeah, and those were just my instant reactions after the Portuguese Grand Prix. Going to Imola next. It's going to be very interesting with only a 2-day weekend, so no practice for basically a brand new track, or a track that we've not been to since, 2005 or 2006. I think was the last time we saw it on the calendar. I'm very excited. I think it's going to be brilliant. Yeah, we saw with the Eiffel Grand Prix when we had no free practice on the Friday, how interesting that was, you know, with strategies and with the teams not knowing much about the track and about the tyres. It's going to be very, very exciting to see how the teams cope with it. It's a fairly unique challenge as well. And it's going to be a big test for Formula 1 to see whether these 2-day weekends could be the way forward. I think this is one big experiment from them. You know, obviously with what's happened in the world recently, it's given us the opportunities to go to new tracks and try out these new things. So I'm very excited to see how that all plays out. And of course, you know, can Lewis Hamilton keep that momentum going? Can Bottas maybe find something back, even though that championship is pretty much done now? Again, I think the Constructors' Championship can be won there. I don't know the exact stats on that, what Mercedes need to do, but yeah, it's going to be won within the next 2 or 3 races, I think, and you know the Drivers' Championship won't be far behind that either. So very, very interesting. Still a lot of things to keep an eye on. Obviously, that midfield battle as well, so it's going to be very exciting to see how they all get on. But yeah, let me know what you thought of the Portuguese Grand Prix. Do you think it was a good race or a bad race? I think there could be a few mixed opinions here, but I really enjoyed it personally. So yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe on this video as well. But yeah, that's all from me today. I'll catch you all later in the week with the Post Podium podcast. But until then, have a good one.